We have principles in the practice, and can you talk about a little about like what are the key points in the practice?
Yeah, one of the principles is trusting experience or trusting your experience. And I remember when I first started to kind of get that or the significance of that, and seeing the ways I would actually turn away from myself. And totally unconsciously, I didn't know it was happening until I started to see it. And the consequences of that are so huge because like you are yourself. So if you turn away from yourself, then like you and the world is getting less of who you actually are. And learning to like trust, continually trust, even when it doesn't make sense, like what's like actually happening within us, and to dare to move with it, even if like a week later we might realize that we were totally off with what we were going with. It felt like some kind of permission slip for me that not only helped me to live my life more fully, but it led to more magic. It was like some of the things that I wasn't trusting actually contained like immense wisdom or intuitions, or and then when I did follow them, it was like, oh, it found a resonance with someone else, or in some cases it rustled people's feathers and people reacted strongly to it, but I could still tell like I have to do this, like this is actually right for me. And a lot of people are kind of used to doubting themselves in certain ways or shaming themselves or judging themselves, and what's really nice is to see people actually kind of discover the gold that's already in them, that they were kind of discarding, that they'd learned to discard to survive in various ways. And learning to trust your experience more, it's integrating more of who you are, and it allows for new pathways to move in your life.
So are you saying that if I feel shame about something, I should trust that and it's actually fine?
Well, obviously one principle is not going to solve too much about about life, but because yes, it's all very well to trust something, but then what? Okay, I'm trusting I've got violent rage. What should I do? Should I smash the window? Should I repress it? Should I tell someone? So absolutely, like the complexity of how to integrate what we're experiencing is still challenging, but it definitely helps to have a yes there in the first place than a no.
Yeah, so the way how I see it, if I say yes to like just in principle, okay, I just have that strange experience, rage, shame, whatever. I just open like a door to see like in like what's happening in this experience. Like because if I'm if the whole life I'm used to like suppressing like rage, anger, whatever, it's like I never opened the door to see like what's actually happening there. Why, like, where does it even come from? Does it like direct me to some direction where, like, towards a need or a thing? It's like, yeah,
Right, and there can be so much variety with that. So I started to discover anger in me early on in these practices, and it was really confronting. I wanted to put it away. It's like, oh, that's not very friendly. And then Sean would actually get angry at me for not bringing my anger, which was interesting. And then I started to bring my anger. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to start bringing this. And it contained so much clarity. It was unbelievable. And he was so grateful for it.
yeah,
But then other times I've discovered rage, and it's like it takes me down to, 1-year-old self that wasn't held enough at night. And a lot of the things we'll discover you can kind of integrate quite quickly and get a sense of, and others are like those deep existential life challenges that you might not make much traction with, and it might be really confronting. But again, personally, I'd rather have some consciousness there than than to be just playing out scripts unconsciously.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about trusting the experience is it points to that nothing about me is wrong. Like all of the parts in me have validation to exist in the world, and I don't have to remove any part of me. I just have to like integrate, look into it, kind of like take ownership of that thing.
Right.
As a general thing, I am complete, or what's the word, whole. I'm whole. I'm not like part of me is wrong, I have to like put it away. It's the like a general way how people tend to, I don't know, feel themselves, I think.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that links to a wider paradigm of realization around wholeness, and like IFS, no bad parts, and integral theory, which is about integrating the good in everything. And it feels like there is kind of a cultural realization of that, of like, oh yeah, not wrong, essentially. It's just about integrating, and that integration needs discernment, and it's not always easy, but it's very relieving.
Yeah, I think it's like a kind of like a new paradigm in general. Like I don't know when it's started to kind of flip this way around, that it's fine, everything is fine about us, but there's a lot of different like, I don't know, methodologies which are really like trying to fix people. Like it's a very general statement, but I see it as like a paradigm shift, like from like there's something wrong with us, we need to fix, we need to get better, and this practice is like, no, we don't need to get better, it is just we are already fine, we just can become more aware of things.
And paradoxically, that is transformational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's liberating.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was the one principle.
One.
What else do we have?
We have owning experience. And
How do you do that?
yeah, this was, it made me so happy learning this principle. It was like, oh, it's so obvious. Why have I never thought of that? Like, wow. Like, oh, we can actually communicate in a way where you're revealing your unarguable experience. So thinking of conversations where you get into right, wrong arguments and all different things that happen in connection, and then like, oh, I can own my experience and then bring it back to what is actually happening in this present moment in me on an experiential level. And that is kind of, that's just the truth. Like if someone tries to argue against that with me, it doesn't make sense, because it's like, oh no, that was, I mean, maybe it's changed by the time they're starting to argue with me, but like we can actually pull reality back to something that we know is true. And that's what's cool in these practices, is when everyone's doing that together, we've just got information, we've just got truth coming through. But relationally, the difference between being slightly aggressive in a communication and then bringing it back to like, oh, I actually need this thing, it transforms the relationship. So our ability to own our experience, which isn't easy, and we don't, even highly experienced practitioners don't manage it all the time, because it's like taking responsibility, taking ownership for what's actually alive in us, rather than making objective assessments. And not to cut out that completely from communication, like these are principles, they're not rules, they're just guides that can help us. And it links to nonviolent communication, is similar in that way. And it first of all, it takes you closer to yourself, which feels good and nourishing. And second of all, it inspires others typically, or it's going to help you in the relationship. Certain circumstances, it might still lead to a challenge in a relationship, but at least you know that that's real. Like you're no longer faking it in some way in that relationship. Which also then links to a sense of surrender, which isn't one of the principles, but it's like probably our biggest guiding idea. Like if you are going to live that way with trust and with ownership, then in a way you are surrendering a certain kind of control.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one of my favorite principles. Also the hardest, I think.
Right.
Because sometimes it's so good to blame others.
Exactly. Exactly. It really does feel real this time.
Okay, so we
And
have trust. Yeah.
even with that, there's still nuance because sometimes like that expression of anger towards someone else can be positive, like it can hold clarity. So there's still nuance, but as a general thing, it's like for most of us, it's like, oh yeah, this is really useful. This really actually takes us deeper into ourselves and into what's actually there in our connections.
Mm. Yeah, and to me, it actually brings like the power back to home.
Exactly.
Because when I'm owning my experience, this is something I can navigate. I can never navigate the other people or what they are saying to me or what's happening with them. It's only me who I can be in charge.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, just this thing you're saying, Christina, I think because of this principle, I have like this indication in my life, like whenever I'm blaming someone or I feel that um, why am I getting not what I want or a thing like that, like something is not the way how I want it to be and I feel like I can't do anything about it and I feel like this weak about it, then this is like, okay, what am I not owning here or what am I still not seeing here? Like there is something probably in my subconscious that I'm not aware, that I'm not owning. Like I have somehow developed this kind of system for myself.
Mm. And then you need to trust it.
Yeah, because the feeling of when I'm actually owning something in a deep level, that feels always powerful.
Yeah.
And when I don't feel powerful or in my power, in my authority, that's like a sign that I'm not in my deepest ownership for me.
Mm.
Maybe I'm owning like a top layer of something, but layers to go deeper even, which is really cool.
So then what else do we have? Commitment to connection.
Commitment to connection. Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of. That's a practice of deeply honoring yourself and deeply honoring others and holding that tension of like deeply honoring yourself, deeply honoring all others, or at least all others' experience, like what their present moment experience is. And it's also a commitment to connection, like more broadly, like connection to yourself, connection to others, connection to life, like what is connection, like how can I honor the fact that we're already all interconnected, like how can I let that kind of knowing guide me?
I think this practice sometimes has misunderstanding that we need to stay in connection, like I need to want to talk to you or I need to look into your eyes when I'm talking to you. Is that true, John?
Yeah, I think that is true. And to be honest, when we came up with this principle, there were still codependencies at work in me and Sean that probably aided that understanding. of so we did get a lot of gold of like, wow, if we actually stay in a bit longer than is normally comfortable and we dare to meet each other in these opposing truths or whatever, like often it leads to magic, and it's totally worth committing to connection in that way more. But for me, like I remember a therapist telling me, you'd rather be hopeless and lonely than walk away. And like I felt my body respond yes to that, and in my mind I'm like, what? Why would I be rather be hopeless and lonely than walk away? And that pointed to a codependency that I had. And it took a long time for me to be able to walk away, because in rare circumstances or in certain circumstances, like that's the connective move. That's the truth. That's the way to honor yourself deeply and honor the other person, is actually to walk away. So there isn't actually anything about needing to stay connected in a particular way, because when you look at the more spiritual dimension or the more interconnected dimension, it's like we're already connected. So this principle is about the honoring. Like, can I walk away and still be honoring myself and the other? Or am I doing it like to withdraw and to kind of create a dynamic to try and lash out at them or try and get what I want? So it's the honoring piece will help you discern there, like what's actually going on.
Yeah, for me, it's like having like again like layers of awareness, like awareness of my experience. If my experience is like desire to walk away, and then I'm actually doing the step, there's like a higher awareness in me. It's like, okay, this is happening in connection. I am now turning away, and in that level, I'm like still like staying in connection.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even like kind of like asking the partner, so how is it for you if I'm walking away?
Right. I did it a lot. I was leading an SAS. We started one in Stockholm last weekend. And for some reason, most times when we sat down in the circle, I wanted to get up and leave. And the first time I thought it was quite funny, like I'm leading, it's the first weekend of the 6-month event, like, okay. And I shared it. It's like, I feel I need to get up and like move out a little bit, and people laughed, but it was really true. And then it kept happening, and I would follow it, and I would kind of start to leave the circle and like really notice, like, would I rather be outside, like, and away from it? And I would start to move towards that, and it's like, no, I actually feel love for these people. I want to be back, but I don't want to be too close. And I was just touching more vulnerable parts in me that needed to like come into connection slowly. And then it's like, oh, where do I want to be in the circle? Like, oh, there, I'm going to go there. And then I'll come into super rich connections with people.
And it's also like can indicate that there's some kind of unsafety in me, and the way how I deal with it is like I kind of pull back, and I actually need to pull back to be a little bit on my own, or like in a like have like space. And it's like if I push myself to actually be in like a very close connection, then I'm running over this need that actually needs different kind of safety or different kind of I don't know, tenderness or space, or yeah, for me that has been a thing.
So it seems this this principle is like the most connected with a boundary. I think also setting the boundaries and having the boundaries, and like, where am I in communication? Is it true for you?
I would, it feels the same for me for trusting experience and owning experience. It does feel true, but it lands the same in me in all three.
Okay.
Yeah. That like, yeah, you're getting closer to yourself, you're getting close to your how you want to actually move, and you're doing that with respect for other people.
Okay. So the other principle that I think this is where, to me, everything starts is my body, connection to my body. What can you say about that? Like,
yes, staying with the level of sensation. It's on one level, it's can we integrate more of what's happening in our body? Can we connect more to who we are in our body? And it's easy to move away from that and get into abstraction, and the practice is to try to include the wisdom of our body at the very least. But it's also to listen to sensation, the experience of sensation, and go deeper into what experience really is. Because I had an experience last night leading an online SAS of like looking into my experience and like, what the hell is experience? Like there's layers to it. There's all kinds of things going on. There doesn't seem to be an outside or an inside. There's feelings, there's visions, so it's an invitation to kind of stay with the immediate data of what's happening in your experience, which can get interesting when you come into connection with others, because you start to notice these subtleties, subtle shifts in sensation when you connect with someone. And they're not random, is what, when we start sharing them and checking them with each other, it's like, wow, we feel each other incredibly deeply. And so it's about becoming more sensitive. Like I can't believe how much more sensitive I am to life and to people now. That was all numb before, or highly numbed.
do you have any, like, but because when I'm leading the circles, it seems to me that it's also one of the hardest thing to people to really like know at all, like what they are feeling. Like if you ask like how are you, or they're like, I'm fine, or like, no, I'm good, I'm not thirsty, I'm not hungry. These are the basics. Like,
Right.
but we have so many sensations, like basically every interaction we have with the other person or something, it brings something, if we are like precise. But why is it so that most of us are so numb?
I think that's a good question. I mean, I can speak to why I was so, like, part of my numbness is being scared stiff on some levels. Like I have had memories come up last weekend in the SAS from my teenage years of like when I got threatened that I was going to get beaten up by all these older kids, and like I completely froze in that moment, and my identity actually shifted. I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't feel I had any support, and my identity actually shifted. Like I traced it back this weekend. This came up in the circles for me. Like, oh yeah, I started to lie after that because I was in survival mode. I was like, I need to fit into this social situation. So I started lying to try to give people what they wanted to some degree to stay safe. And it actually worked. Like I didn't get beaten up, but that shaped my life in quite a significant way. And I think most of us can go back to various things where maybe a heartbreak was too big, or a betrayal, and so we've numbed, and we forget that we've even numbed. And part of being in these practices is realizing like, oh, I'm actually numbing myself, and that's a process that's actually taking up energy now to numb myself, and it's innocent because I needed to do that. But then gradually that numbing, when there's safety, that numbing will release, and then you get all new life energy, and you get more emotion, and more sensitivity, and that's possible for everyone. But it's a gradual process, because each of those experiences that we've had needs to be honored as a part of it, and And that's where it links to connection. We're actually connecting to what our life has really been like. And we're actually seeing others in what their life has really been like, that's actually showing up in the present moment. Like it's all kind of here in that sense data, in the body.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I remember when I started, it was a big surprise to me how bad I was sensing myself. Like I was a yoga teacher, so I thought I was like all in.
Right.
But during the practice, it showed like yeah, I know where my muscles were, but I didn't know much about my body.
Like connecting your physical body and your emotional body.
Mm, yeah.
What I can feel emotions physically, and yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to say one more thing on this, because I don't want people to think that there's a pressure for them to have to be really good at feeling their emotions or anything like that. That's another shadow, I would say, that can come into the practice of like, yeah, but what are you feeling? What are you feeling in your body? Which is going to probably make someone feel more scared and more outside of their body. So the easier question, like for some people, it's still quite easy and that's cool. But for others who struggle with it more, it's like, what are you experiencing is an easier question for people. They might not be able to feel what they're feeling, what their emotions are, but they can start to tell you a bit about their experience, like, oh, I'm thinking this, or noticing my breath is tense, or and that's an easy doorway in, because it's not about needing to be super sensitive, it's about us being ourselves together and meeting people where they are and meeting ourselves where we are.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we have the final one, like being with the other in their world.
Yeah, this one I saw as a kind of secret source or something. It was like when I first witnessed it, it was like, what are they doing? What, like this person's having transformational experiences and yet they're not coaching, they're not trying to change. What are they doing? And it's this really profound way of being with someone exactly where they are and meeting them exactly where they are and getting more shared reality together of what it's actually like in that moment to be them. So it's beyond empathy. It gets to this sense of shared reality where it's like, well, we're really in this reality together, and we seem to have a shared sense of really what it's like for each other and what's happening. And it's such a simple thing to do. And that's why I love this element of the practice of being with someone in their world, because it kind of reminds me to look at someone in that way, which I could look at someone any time. I don't that often, but when I do, it's such a net good. It's like, can be so focused on what I need to do or how to achieve this thing, and then it's like, wow, there's actually like a flower in front of me, or there's a person in front of me, and like I can actually shift my attention to look at them and connect with them in a way that's sees their innocence and sees their beauty and establishes something very real with them. And that's the main thing we practice over the 6 months in the upcoming SAS, of doing that with each other. And I remember that some of the first retreats I went to, it was like there's a few people I just didn't like and I kind of avoided a bit. And when I came to do this practice with them, I started to see them in more, with more nuance, and I could start to see their innocence, and I could start to see why the things that annoyed me, why they were there, and where they had come from. And it started to dawn on me of like, holy fuck, like this is possible to be done with anyone. And it might not be easy to do and it might take a long time to reveal the more vulnerable parts, but that's the reality that we live in. Like, they're there.
Mm.
That was a big paradigm shift for me.